So what does it mean for something to be accessible? It means that a product can be used by people of varying abilities. So when we talk about digital accessibility and visual access, that means that somebody who has a visual impairment may be able to interact with content on your screen or text on your screen using a screen reader or a braille display. Somebody with a hearing impairment may rely on closed captions or open captions or a transcript for an audio file. Ambulatory disabilities relate to the ability to move, and when it comes to digital access, that usually applies to keyboard navigation and the ability to use a mouse. And finally, cognitive access often relies on the ability to navigate content, to find content, and to interact with the layout and organization of the materials. So we have a cartoon here of 3 children that are trying to watch a baseball game. This is a really common analogy for equality versus equity. Initially, all 3 boys are watching the baseball game standing on the same sized wooden crates. But the problem is that they're looking over a wooden fence, and the shortest child is not able to see the game, while the tallest child could see the game even if he was standing without a wooden crate. In a traditional classroom, there are limited resources. And in order to provide additional support or a second crate for the shortest child so that he can see over the wooden fence, the crate is removed from the tallest child. This is what often happens when students approach disability services in order to receive an accommodation for a disability. Resources are redistributed in order to allow for what may seem like equitable access. But the problem is we don't know if that shortest child missed a key play while he was waiting to receive his second crate. We don't know if he needs help getting up onto the 2 crates. And we don't know if that tall child feels resentment towards the shortest child or if the shortest child is experiencing stigma for receiving the accommodation. Now, let's think about some statistics. In a traditional undergraduate institution, 19% of students have a diagnosed disability. These are students who would have received services in their K-12 education, where it is the mandate of the teachers to provide them with an education that meets their needs. When students reach higher ed, that is no longer the case. Students must self-disclose to disability services in order to receive accommodations. And 60 to 80% of those students choose not to disclose their disabilities, possibly to avoid stigma or to prove to themselves or to others that they can succeed in education without the need for accommodations. These numbers may be even higher in community colleges, in online courses, in evening courses, or for students who have been out of education for a longer period of time. When we look at statistics for the completion of a bachelor's degree for people over the age of 25, the percentage of that population without a disability who is able to complete the degree is much higher than for people with a disability. People with a disability have a much harder time completing a bachelor's degree. So as educators, how can we help all students? We can work to remove barriers. So in the analogy of the students that are watching the baseball game, we can replace the wooden fence with a chain link fence. With the chain link fence, we're still meeting the same learning objectives. We're keeping the children from running onto the field, and we're preventing them from getting a fly ball in the face. But at the same time, all children are able to interact with their learning materials with the baseball game at the same time. There's no delay in receiving accommodations. And there's much less stigma because there are no modifications to the course content that are needed. This is what we strive for with creating more accessible learning materials. So how can we create more accessible learning materials? We start with providing alternatives. Whenever we have visual content, we provide alternative text for those images, those graphics that may be in our courses. That alternative text would be read out loud to somebody using assistive technology. That alternative text would also be available to a student who may be on a slow internet connection and the image isn't loading quickly. When we're teaching in the classroom, we verbally describe the visual elements that are on the board or being projected onto the screen, so a student who's sitting further back or who may have a harder time seeing the visual content can still understand and follow along with the lecture. Whenever we create diagrams or charts, we can use patterns in addition to color to help those who may be colorblind. So if we have a bar graph, we can use texture on the bars. If we have a line graph, we can use different shapes to go along with our lines. When we have audio content, we use closed captions that are synchronized with video and can be read by the learner, or a transcript for an audio file such as a podcast. If we have text on the screen, we want to make sure that that text is readable, not just visually, but also by assistive technology. A quick check of that is to see if you can copy and paste text from the screen into a document. That is the start to being able to make sure that the document is going to be readable. And we want to make sure that there is high color contrast anytime that color is used in a document or on the screen. Headings in a document help to navigate through the material. They help to be able to get right to the information that is needed without having the screen reader read out all of the paragraphs of text that may be presented. And descriptive hyperlinks allow for the learner to know where they're going to end up when they click on the link. In the example here is an email that I received for placing a certain order. It says, "Dear Marisha, thank you for your order. Please click on the link to download a copy of your receipt." The word link is the hyperlink. If I was using assistive technology, I would be able to navigate to that link and I would hear link, link. I would know that there was a link, but I would have no idea where that link was going to take me. Now let's think for a second. What could we do to make this email more accessible and easier to use for somebody interacting with it with assistive technology? Instead of hyperlinking the word link, we maybe would hyperlink the words "download a copy of your receipt." So instead, the email would read, "Thank you for your order. Please download a copy of your receipt." So the reading still flows really easily, but now the assistive technology would read out link, download a copy of your receipt.